Welcome once again, my brothers and sisters of the faith, and thank you so much for joining us today. I am your host, Pastor Red. Today is a special episode where history meets the present and where the church has to ask itself the honest questions. So today, we will be digging into a whole lot, and our special guest will be our guide for this conversation. And of course, he is Reverend Dr. Elman, that is Emin L. Dunn. And Dr. Dunn is a Liberian born, formed in the life of the church, and ordained at Providence Baptist Church in Monrovia, a congregation founded in the early days of Liberia's Christian witness. He later continued his education through opportunities connected to the World Council of Churches and served for decades in global Baptist leadership with the Baptist World Alliance. Now, today, he serves as chief executive, that is the executive secretary of the Lott Cary Baptist Foreign Mission Convention, and he also serves in a regional leadership as president of the North American Baptist Fellowship. His training includes study connected to Virginia, that is Virginia Theological Seminary and Howard University School of Divinity, with additional studies at Colorado State University. So Dr. Dunn is not only talking about Lott Cary as history, he is connected to this legacy by his calling, by church roots, and by the present mission leadership. I'd like to say welcome, Dr. Dunn, to the Gracious Hope podcast today. It's a pleasure. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Doc, for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Great, great. And before we jump into the questions, just give us 1 minute here. When you hear the name Lott Cary, what rises in your heart first? And why does this story still matter right now?
Well, the word that comes to mind when we think about Lot Carey is the word sacrifice. A man who, um, for all intended purposes, had somewhat of a decent life, putting it in the context of African American struggle through slavery. But he had purchased his own freedom and was living relatively well. And I say contextually, we can't separate that from what was the prevailing political and social culture in the state, and especially in the state of Virginia at the
Mhm.
time. But there to seek freedom against all odds,
Mhm.
brave the high seas and finally landed in what is now Liberia. So for me, that word, that guiding word, is sacrifice.
Sacrifice. Wow. And that is why his legacy remains relevant today in Liberian history. And I would like to say amen to that. So let's get into our questions here about Lott Cary's legacy. And so let us set the stage here, first of all, looking at Liberia's founding movement. And so, Dr. Don, let's just take us into the world of the early 1800s. When we talk about Liberia's beginnings, what
Mhm.
kind of spiritual and historical movement are we stepping into? What forces were colliding? And what did that mean for the church from that day up to now?
Well, thank you. I think history, anytime a people forsake its history, that people is headed for destruction. And so always good to go back, no matter how painful that history may be, it's always good to go back. Now, to put your question, to make your question real, we have to put it in the context of what was going on in the early 1800s, not in what is now Liberia, but let's start what was going on in what is now these United States, right? Because in order to understand Lord Cary's legacy, we cannot start from Liberia. We have to go back, all right?
Mhm.
Lord Cary was born into slavery. right, was basically reared by his grandmother and worked hard to purchase his freedom, felt called to the gospel ministry, taught himself how to read and write, and taught himself how to be a preacher and a pastor, established what is now known as the Providence Baptist Church, right, in the Americas. And when the opportunity for repatriation came about, he and a group of others decided to take that giant step to travel to Africa. So early January 1821, I think history put it at January 23rd of 1821, he and several others sailed to what is now Sherbro Island, current Sierra Leone, and they landed on Sherbro Island in March of 1821, and stayed there for about 9 to 10 months. His first wife died in Sierra Leone, and the conditions were not conducive for formerly enslaved people who came from the U.S. because there was some political rivalry between the U.S. and the United Kingdom at the time. So those who were coming from the USA were not really welcome, on Sherbro Island. So Juhida Ashman, who was the then agent of the American Colonization Society, the ACS, uh, um, negotiated for some land in Liberia. And in early February of 1822, Lott and a host of others, and we need to put the dates in historical truth because most people think Lott landed in Liberia in 1821. That's not historically correct. He landed in Africa in 1821 on Sherbro Island, March of 1821. And in 1822, February 1822, they landed on Providence Island in what is now Liberia. So what were some of the colliding forces as the question dictates? Okay, one, you understand that Lord Cary and those who came to Liberia were coming to a land totally unknown.
Yeah.
There was nothing they read about, nothing written about. They didn't understand the landscape, didn't understand the social construct. They didn't understand, the diet, understood nothing about Liberia. So they were entering into what I call the land of the unknown, but one with faith in God, with resilience and determination to survive a harsh land and harsh condition, they thrive for the longest. And so what they faced with was uncertainties, but what guided them was faith in providence and the human desire to succeed.
Yes, yes, yes. And I compare his faith to the nation, the father of all nations, Abraham. When God told him from the pagan nation, go, he was going. He had not seen that place, but he had faith. And because he believed, God counted him as righteous. Wow. And I'm glad also that you cleared the misunderstanding about his arrival in Africa and then what we call now Liberia, because some people misunderstand that particular area. And
Right.
so to tell this complex, simple but complex story of our beginning, like from the 1800s, I think that is fascinating. Now, let's talk a little bit about um, having like Cary goes from an enslaved man in Virginia to
Right.
a preacher, a mission leader, and a public servant in Liberia. Now, what does his conversion and growth teach us about how God forms leaders?
Mhm. Excellent question. Uh, Allow me to also state that Lord Cary was the first African American or Black American or Black missionary that went directly from the USA to Africa, to Liberia. He was the very first to do that. All right. I know we know of Coca George that landed in Sierra Leone before Lord Cary, but he came by way of Canada. He did not come directly from the
Mhm.
USA. So Lott Cary was the first one from the USA directly to the shores of West Africa. Just again another little
Yes.
Saba historical fact, right? But let's talk about how Lott Cary evolved from being formerly enslaved to
Mhm.
becoming a preacher, a prophetic voice, a pastor of the first Christian church on the shores of Liberia, the Providence Baptist Church. And he also, a lot of people may not even know that, he was also a quasi medical practitioner. All right. So he also served in the clinic of the colony, but he was also a commanding officer of the frontier force. And when we talk about his death, which is controversial, we'll talk more of that.
Yeah.
But he also rose to the fact that um, when Jehudi Ashman got sick and left the colony of Monrovia and sailed back to the USA, he left in charge Lott Cary. Lott Cary was acting governor of the
Hmm.
colony.
Wow.
And Jehuda Ashman, when he arrived in the state, he recommended to the ACS that since he was not coming back, that Lott Cary become the governor of the colony. Unfortunately, before that word got back to Monrovia, Lott Cary was dead, and we can talk about that. But let's talk about how he evolved and what it means for
Yes.
character building and rise to leadership. I think about Moses when I think about Lott Cary. All right. Think about Moses. Moses was born in slavery. Moses' parents were slaves.
Mhm.
Therefore, Moses was born as a slave. But through divine providence, Moses ended up in Pharaoh's palace and lived under disguise for 40 years as the son of Pharaoh. All right. Moses, because of his social justice mentality, got himself into some trouble, as you know. I'm preaching
Yes.
to the choir, you know the story, and flee to Midian, where he worked for Jethro, his father-in-law, for another 40 years. All right. And God called him at 80 years old to go back to Egypt to serve as an emancipator for the Hebrew people. All right.
Mhm.
So when you look at how Moses evolved from being a slave to the son of
Mhm.
Pharaoh to a foreigner working in Midian, working for his father in law, to then becoming a servant of God, the deliverer of God's people. You think about Lott Cary, born into slavery,
Yeah.
got his own pay for his own emancipation, comes to Liberia and thrusts himself into the formation of what is now Africa's oldest republic. All right. What it says to me is that God prepare us in unusual ways for what God intends for us to do. My grandmother always used to say, no education is bad. You may not use it, but no education is bad. So my lesson from Moses' life and Lott Cary's life is that whatever our hands find to do,
Mhm.
let us do it well. Let us
Yeah.
do it with integrity, with character, and with respect for one another, because you never know what God is preparing you for. That opportunities come our way not because we are entitled, but it just might be that God is preparing you for something. There's this cliche that we say, be patient with me because
Yeah.
God is not through with me yet. God will never get through with us until God calls us home. So I learned a great lesson from the life of Lord Cary. Be humble, utilize every opportunity, do the best you can because you never know what lies around the corner for you.
And I agree. And I strongly believe that through his developmental process, it was discipline, learning, and scripture played a role in his development. And some people who are listening to you right now, they will look at our own life, particularly those who feel disqualified by their starting point. They can look up to Cary, how he started. Starting from from a place of enslavement and then seeking his freedom and still remembering that God's providence led him to where he needed to
Right.
be. And so, if you're saying with Moses, God raises leaders from the margins, and that's how they develop that character,
Right.
which is a pretty good, encouraging thing to hear. So now, let's talk about spiritual legacy. When you look at what Cary planted spiritually in our country, what did he model about preaching Christ, building a church community, and shaping the conscience of the people?
Um, Really, you cannot divorce uh, Lott Cary's. And by the way, another historical fact: Lott Cary always spelled his name Cary. There's nowhere in Lott Cary's writings that you will ever find him spelling his name Carey. We've
Okay.
done a lot of historical research to find out where that E came from, and we're still working to find that. But in all of Lott Cary's writings, he
Hmm.
spelled his name Cary. Just
Why?
another historical caveat on the
Okay.
side. But Lott Cary was guided by his faith. It was faith that caused Lott Cary to immigrate into Africa.
Yeah.
It was faith that kept him, above the fray amidst all of the struggles and setbacks that he and others experience in this land of the unknown. Um, but I would say Lott Cary was also guided by his own humanity
Hmm.
because it was his desire to liberate what was imprisoned
Yeah.
in the sense of his humanity, because he felt all while in the States that he could not live out his true essence of a person fashioned in the image and likeness of God under the context of slavery.
Hmm.
And it is because of his desire to free himself and free others along with him he landed in Africa. So nothing of Lott Cary's life would have been significant void of his faith in God. So he was guided by his own divine unction. He was led by that. He was fashioned by that. He was humbled by that. And so, yes, when we talk about, Lord Cary's spirituality and how it helped him do what he was able to do, it is
Hmm.
because of the fact that despite all else, he felt that he was guided by divine providence. And that's why, he named the island Providence, he
Hmm.
named the church Providence, because for him, his life was formed and fashioned by providence, God's divine providence. So that word is just not a word to throw around.
Yes.
Lakira believed it so much that the very land he arrived at, he named the island Providence and he
Providence.
named the church Providence. That's where you have Providence Island and you have Providence Baptist Church.
Yes, and even in the preamble of the Constitution, that word providence is there. By the providence of God's grace, gave us this nation we call Liberia. Yeah, so providence is important. And when I hear Providence Baptist Church, or even in my writing, I always put historic Providence Baptist Church. And Reverend Dr. Samuel B. Reeves love for me to say that, for me to say historic. I was
Yeah.
just thinking about that particular area, about, I mean, I'm thinking, what does gospel centered preaching look like when a nation is still being formed at that time? And I'm also thinking that, wow, how does the church keep that spiritual authority without becoming a tool of power? And like Cary played public serving role, acting governor, and he founded the historic Providence Baptist Church in 1822. And he had many hats, and I can see the discipline and I can see the roles that he played. But one role that is a defining moment. It is about not just church discipleship or community formation or moral clarity, but courage and compassion. And that, of course, brought about the education. And we know that education can serve mission of the church. Education can shape minds and character. So now the question is, Cary's legacy is not only about sermons, it includes education and training. What does Christian mission always drift when education is neglected? And what kind of education best strengthens the nation's moral habits?
Another historical fact, Providence Baptist Church landed in 1822, but Providence Church was actually founded in 1821. He already founded the church. He just brought the church with him. Another historical fact. And that's when you see Providence history dates back to 1821. It is correct. That church year, it dates back to 1821. It is correct because Providence was not founded in Liberia. It was founded prior to Liberia. He brought the church with him. And so in our history, we say the founding of Providence Baptist Church was in 1821. It's not a contradiction, if you understand the full context of the history. Because people say, how can you say 1821 and you still at Cary came 1822? Because he brought the church with him. All right. Again, you're getting a lot of I will send you my bill for giving your audience free history lesson tonight. But anyway, let's talk about education. And I know you. I mean, I've had the privilege of meeting you in person once. We've interacted a few times, virtually. And I know your value in education. I know all the letters you have behind your name, not because, it makes you a better person, but because it makes you an educated person. You believe in education. Lott, Cary, like you and I, believe that an educated people is an emancipated people. Let me say it again. An educated people is an emancipated people. Let me digress. The reason why our democracy, our meaning Liberia, is so fragile and fickle because we do not have an educated electorate. No insults, no disrespect. It's just a fact. And as long as we have an illiterate electorate, we have people serving in high places that represent an illiterate society. Let me come back to your question. Whenever the church drifts away from education, our preaching becomes shallow. It's like Paul says in Corinthians, without love, you become what? A gong, a kingly gong. It's like an empty drum. When you hit it, all you hear, boom, just emptiness. Whenever you have an uneducated congregation, then you feast on emotion and not on the intellectual stimulation that comes from sound theological exegesis. I'm sorry, I'm not talking to a theological class, but what I mean is, whenever you play on the ignorance of an uneducated congregation, what you end up with is bad interpretation of the gospel, because you have no one to question it. An educated congregation is taught to think critically, to think logically, to think spiritually, but also think theologically. That in our discourse, in our theological discourse, we are encouraged to put things in the right perspectives and context. That means historical, culture, political, analytical, all to we arrive at a sound, logical conclusion as to what is God calling us to be and to do. So whenever the church drifts away from education, you have an emotional community. You don't have an intellectual community. But another thing is, you then play on You spiritualize everything. So people are not even encouraged to question the very political society in which they live.
Mhm.
They're not encouraged, to tackle the issue of corruption, injustice, of violence and abuse against women and children, because everything is spiritualized, because they thrive on the premise that this world is not our home. We're just
Mhm.
passing through. We're all fighting to get to heaven, while earth is a living hell, and no one seems to be able to correct that wrong, because we're teaching people, uh, we're putting them on this emotional high to just
Mhm.
get to heaven. The adage that we use, you know, um, you so heaven focused, earthly good.
Mhm.
And so whenever uh we drift, Doc, that's what happened. Our congregation becomes shallow. There's nothing intellectually stimulating about that. And also, when that happens, critical thinking is parked on the shelf. People are not taught to think. They were
Mhm.
told what to think. Now, if you find yourself in any congregation, if you're listening to me tonight, and you find yourself in any congregation, be it in Liberia or here in the United States, and you are told what to think,
Hmm.
you should not be in that congregation.
Yeah.
Any sound, educated, theologically trained pastor should teach his or her people how to think, not what to think. Because
Hmm.
when you're taught how to think, you can process for yourself, you can decipher for yourself, you can reason with yourself, and come to a conclusion, hopefully, that would benefit yourself. But when you're told what to think, you're towing the line for the one who taught you how to think. And
Hmm.
that's what happens when the mission of the church drifts away from the
Yes.
focus of education.
I,
Again, an
mhm.
educated people is an emancipated people.
I agree. And that kind of an education shapes social behavior in practical ways. But then the question remains, what do you believe Liberia needs most today in Christian education?
Oh, it's simple. First of all, to start with, they need trained theological educators.
Mhm.
They need trained theological educators. Look, no one goes to a doctor that's not trained.
Yeah.
No one goes for surgery without a trained surgeon. No one goes, to hopefully a mechanic who doesn't know how to work on cars. Why then do you go to a church whose pastor does not want to go to school? Why? So, in order to have a theologically sound community, we must have trained church leaders, either in the area of Christian education or in the area of theology. You know, I believe that no denomination, no convention should license anyone who come
Mhm.
to you and say God called them to preach without education, because that is what is hindering the theological and ecclesiastical progress
Mhm.
of our Christian community in Liberia. We have people passing around, and the proliferation of untrained clergy people in Liberia is alarming.
Mhm. It
It's
is.
alarming.
Hmm.
It's extraordinarily alarming.
Yeah.
You know, and if we don't, arrest that situation, it will get worse.
It will get worse. That's true. And that is why formation or spiritual formation, literacy, critical thinking, and the vocation of being a preacher or a pastor, dignity matters, character matters as well. Well, if you're just joining us, this is the Gracious Hope Podcast. We are here live streaming. with our special guest, Reverend Dr. Emmett L. Dunn. And we are talking about the legacy of Lott Cary. And it's very interesting to know more about his spiritual and educational legacy of our country. We've been learning some history here about a very, very important man, and his role in the formation of a country is so significant. And discussing his legacy, it is something I believe that we must learn so that we can be enlightened about the moral foundation of our country, especially looking at years of tumultuous considerations and picking out the pieces of reconciliation and to see how our country can move forward. We'll now take a break, and when we come back, we'll be asking Dr. Dunn's current role in maintaining Lott Cary's legacy. We'll be right back. Don't go away. This is the Gracious Hope Live Podcast. All right, we are back. We are back, and feel free to opine, make a comment right in the comment section there. I see someone here made a comment, but it just said, "Wow!" Apparently, they are so overwhelmed by the history of Lott Cary and his mission in Liberia. So, thank you for that comment. And for all of you who are watching right now, hey, share this live podcast with your friends, your families, and your loved ones, and even your groups, so they can be a part of this podcast. So now let us move to leading the mission movement that carries Cary's name. And you now lead a mission convention named for Lott Cary. What does it mean personally and spiritually to carry that responsibility? And how do you protect the legacy from becoming just a cash phrase instead of a living mission?
Well, first of all, Doc, I'm humbled by it. I'm very, very, very humbled by it. To put it in context, Lott Cary is the largest and oldest African American Baptist missional community that have existed in America and in the world. We have been around for 127 unbroken years.
Wow.
And I happen to be the very first non-American to head this organization. That's a humbling experience for me. I'm not entitled. I don't deserve it. And for whatever reason, God has placed me in this very significant missional role. I don't know, but I've made myself available and obedient to do this work. Lott Cary footprint is now registered in over 27 countries around the world. We are currently actively engaging with communities in 14 countries currently, from women's empowerment to youth capacity building to healthcare to education to pastors capacity building to orphanage, helping orphanage literacy program. You name it, we are walking alongside of indigenous people around the world. Maintaining the legacy is simply this: staying focused on the work of Lott Cary, and that is walking alongside of suffering humanity wherever they are. Lott Cary is Baptist by heritage, but ecumenical by practice. What do I mean? While we have our roots within the Baptist community, the African American Baptist community, we walk alongside of people of every faith and every denomination. We do not only serve Baptists. You don't have to be a Baptist to benefit from the work of Lord Cary. So,
Yes.
how do we continue to do that? We must stay faithful to why we were established in the first place, and that is to walk alongside of indigenous people wherever they are. And so, my work is challenging but fruitful and rewarding. Rewarding to know that what we do empowers generation,
Mhm.
enable people, liberate people, emancipate people, encourage people. Because at the end of the day, it's not about not caring, it's
Yes.
about impacting lives. And so we brand ourselves by saying, Lord Cary is a missional community that transform lives with the redeeming love of Jesus Christ. And that's who we are. And as long as I remain faithful
Mhm.
to that calling of transforming lives, Lord Cary's legacy will live on. And if this barefoot boy from Oro Joba can add a little to
Mhm.
that legacy, then to God be the glory.
Yeah, and the legacy is building in a way where even the president of Liberia, the current president Joseph Boakai, has reposed trust in you to be the chair of the Liberia Diaspora Conference, which, of course, the last one was very successful. The one before then, and the last one in Liberia, and so you are doing a very good job. But now the question is very poignant. What is one principle you refuse to compromise in mission work?
It's to it's to deviate from what true partnership looks like,
Mhm.
because the our missional ethos, meaning like Cary's missional ethos, not the man like Cary, but the organization, is to recognize the humanity
Hmm.
in everyone.
Yes.
That we do not come with answers, we come to walk alongside you, you know, and I refuse to compromise that. That
Yes.
every human being uh, is ordained by God to live out their true humanity, and Latkeria comes alongside them to ensure that happens. And so I will refuse to compromise our missional philosophy as it relates to partnership.
Yeah, and someone will be listening to you right now. Someone listening to it right now will say, "Okay, what do you want them to feel and see when they hear the name Lakeri today?"
Hope and help.
Mm.
Hope and help. When you hear Lord Carey, you can be hopeful because you're dealing with an organization. Why we do not have millions of dollars, we
Mhm.
do have enough to impact lives. And so we encourage people to be hopeful because you see, here's the thing, while we are humans doing this
Mhm.
work is of divine providence. We become the hands and the feet of God. We become the eyes and the ears of God. You know, um, if God is going to bless you, God is going to use people to bless you. And so we believe that Lord Carey continues to be blessings for people, for young boys and girls, men and women, wherever they are.
Yeah.
And so when you hear Lord Carey, I want you to be hopeful, hopeful that God still, you know, uh, 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 interact with human history in a positive way, and helpful because Lord Carey, will deliver that help that you need.
Indeed, indeed. And talking about that interaction, we are talking about interpersonal interaction and interaction through partnerships that honor dignity and strengthen harmony. So we see that Lakeri's story sits at the intersection of faith, culture, and public life. In your current role, you work across countries and churches. What does a healthy partnership look like?
Mm.
One that strengthens spiritual life, honors culture, and builds harmony rather than dependence.
Thank for that question. I think it's a wonderful question because uh, like Cary exists for partnerships. All
Mhm.
right. Now, partnership is more than fellowship. It's
Yes.
more than people getting together around the table. True partnership, uh, first of all, respects the person sitting across the table.
Yeah.
True partnership does not bring answers. They come asking questions.
Mhm.
True partnership doesn't say this is what you need. True partnership say asks, how can I be of help to you? True partnership doesn't pray for you. True partnership prays with you. There's a difference. Okay? True partnership doesn't stand above you. True partnership stands with you. True partnership come seeking to listen and to learn. One of the things that I do before engaging in any uh, what the circular world will refer to as a memorandum of understanding, we at Cary call it a covenant of collaboration. A covenant of collaboration. Before we enter into any covenant of collaboration, we listen. We listen to what the needs are. We listen to your story. We listen to your journey. And coming out of that, we arrive at a good place where we say that we can work together,
Yeah.
that us working with you, not working for you, not working on behalf of you, but working with you,
With you.
so that, like the Bible says, when you rejoice, we rejoice.
Hmm.
When you weep, we weep. When you're up, we're up. When you're down, we're down, because we are all in this together. So true partnership respects the person sitting across the table. True partnership does not create a situation of dependence,
Yeah.
but true partnership empowers. True partnership will never do for you what you cannot sustain. There is no reason for us uh, to give you a Mercedes when you can't
Hmm.
afford the petroleum for it. There's no reason for us to do that. All
Hmm.
right. But true partnership sits down and you all understand what can and can't be. Because it is only in doing that that you can sustain what you've done in the first place. Most of, if you take a trip throughout the length and breadth of Liberia, you will find dilapidated mission stations,
Hmm.
because those stations were built
Yeah.
by our foreign partners that we can no longer maintain. We can no longer maintain them. And so true partnership would never lead us down that road uh, of something that is not sustainable.
Yeah.
And sometimes people on the receiving end don't understand why those who are the custodians of resources
Hmm.
don't want to do certain things, not because they don't want to do it, but because they understand that if we did it today, we may not be able to do it tomorrow, and you will not be able to do it for yourself. So what happens? Resources are wasted. We see it every day.
Yeah.
I see it every day. It's not unique to Liberia, it's across the world,
Yeah.
where Western missionaries have gone in and without really understanding, the lay of the land, they threw in resources because that's what they thought people wanted or people needed at the time. And it may well could have been what they needed.
Hmm.
But when you look ahead down the road, the long run, it's not sustainable. So it's a true partnership respects the person across the table. True partnership does not lead or create a situation of dependency. And true partnership always, always will seek to understand the culture and tradition of the people with whom they seek to work.
Yeah. And partnership, like you said, it is the essence of respect, that serves as a glue to keep that partnership going. So then the follow-up question will be, how do you keep such partnerships locally led and respectful? And sometimes there'll be challenges such as conflict. What are the warning signs of a partnership that is doing harm?
Well, one of the signs is when the the local partners have to get their marching orders
Mhm.
from the custodians of the resource, meaning the foreign partners. Whenever you have to get your marching orders from someone who is not part of the local community, that's a warning sign. Because remember what we said back in the day, he who pays the piper calls the tune.
Yeah,
He who
I like
pays
that
the
one.
piper calls the tune, you know, and that's not partnership. That's not
Right.
partnership. And so whenever you get your marching orders from your donors, then there's a warning sign. Whenever you become donor centric
Hmm.
rather than people focus, when all your attention is on pleasing the donors and looking toward the donors, that's a sign of a failed partnership. Another sign is when you reorientate everything that you do to fit within the cultural context of the donor is a problem. One of the reasons the church failed miserably in the early centuries of the Christian church was because those who came into Africa wanted to westernize us first
Hmm.
before Christianizing us.
Hmm.
Because for them, Westernization or Western civilization equals Christian behavior.
Hmm.
One of the reasons Islam thrived, especially when it came, you know, onto the continent. Understand, Islam was
Mhm.
not birthed in Africa. All right.
Mhm.
When Islam came into Africa, Islam embraced the African cultural context
Yeah.
and worked within our context.
Yes.
So if a man had his 4 wives, Islam embraced it.
Hmm.
If a man had his culture, then Islam embraced it because Islam intent was not to change your culture,
Yeah.
but to connect you with a divinity that
Yeah.
they felt was better for you. Whereas the white missionaries came in there and said that our congas and our drums were satanic. And so
Yeah.
we should take them out.
I
That our
agree.
culture dress was not Christian lifestyle. Throw that out. A man who had his family, his legal traditional family of
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
that was unacceptable. So they came changing the culture
Hmm.
of our African lifestyle. And so that brought a conflict.
Conflict. Yes.
And so till today you have uh 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 preachers preaching in 90-degree heat with a necktie and a jacket
Jacket.
because that was what the white missionary told them was appropriate Christian dress. For a long time, and I grew up in Providence. It's not an indictment on the church, it's just part of our history. For a long time, I could not preach in Providence without a jacket and a tie. I could
Hmm.
not. I was not allowed to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I tell you,
Yeah.
I pushed the envelope that at the wedding of one of my good friends, a clergy friend of mine at Providence, I wore an African shirt.
Hmm.
I was pushing an envelope. Somebody said I've been a radical a long time. I'm not a radical. I just like to test. Test it. I wore an African shirt to a wedding at Providence,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I hate to say this, but
Hmm.
even my mother scolded me.
Hmm.
Even my mother did that. I was the talk of the wedding. because I was not dressed appropriately,
appropriately.
because I did not come in a Western outfit. I'm just painting the picture for you.
Yes. And I'm with you here because
I'm painting the picture.
I've been doing a lot of research on that
Yeah,
about
I'm
the
painting the picture
early
for you.
Christian missions. Yes,
Yeah,
so
I'm
I
painting a picture for
totally
you.
understand.
Yeah, and I don't think these people were evil people, no, but
No.
they were just so steeped in their own. They made honest mistakes.
Hmm.
They made honest mistakes. They made that lives with us today, till today. So you got choirs in Africa still singing in choir robes.
Hmm.
It's amazing. In fact, some of them pass out from heat and they say it's the Holy Spirit. I can't think about it. I can, I'm not trying to be funny, but I mean, people pass out because it's hot. But they're told that to wear a choir robe is the appropriate attire for a choir. But these people singing in robes in air-conditioned churches here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So you talk about the impact of Christianity on our culture. That's it's a fundamental impact that we inherited from years gone by.
Yeah. And if you're just joining us, this is the Gracious Hope podcast with our special guest, Reverend Dr. Emmett L. Done, and we have some people here making some comments. Chester Dolo said his favorite line. Said my favorite line that is from you. The proliferation of untrained clergy people passing around in Liberia is alarming. This is the hard fact. And then he also writes, from the historical context, Christianity played a very significant role in the formation of what we call today Liberia, especially from the influence of Cary. How do you reconcile these foundational significance and impact laid down by early Christians, including Cary, to the current status of Liberia that is quoted on, quote, secular nation, a total departure from what or the kind of Liberia Cary envisioned?
It's an excellent question. An
Yeah.
excellent question because and I have wrestled with this with a lot of my clergy friends.
Mhm.
And let me put it in political context.
Mhm.
Okay. Liberia has never been a Christian nation.
Mhm.
I tell you why. We always have said that. I do not disagree with is that a gentleman or
Yeah.
lady?
His name is Chester Dolo.
I, I
Yeah.
I do not disagree with Brother Chester. Brother Chester is right. Liberia was founded on Christian principles. Do not get me wrong. That is a political historical fact. But any nation
Mhm.
that has a circular constitution ceases to be a religious nation. It doesn't mean that you cannot uphold Christian principles. It doesn't mean that you do not celebrate. No, it simply means that everybody under the law has the right to live out whatever religious belief they have.
Mhm.
To declare a nation a Christian nation is to create a religious divide within the country, which leads to political instability.
Mhm.
All right. I am a Christian to the core. All right. I believe in the salvific power of Jesus Christ. I believe in the God of the Bible. But I also believe in the right of humanity,
Mhm.
that every religious beliefs should have the same opportunities as Christianity to thrive and function within a circular society.
Mhm.
And we should not deviate from that. That within Liberia, we have been able to coexist with the three dominant religious beliefs in Liberia. That is Christianity, Islam, and African traditional religion.
Mm-hmm.
Some people tend to forget that, but that is one of the largest religious communities we have in Liberia,
Yeah.
African traditional religion. So
I
those
agree.
three religious communities have been able to coexist in peace, and we thank God for that. All right,
Mhm.
and we need to stay away from trying to brand Liberia as a Christian nation, because we never have been,
Mhm.
and we never will be, because I, for one, will be want to lead a protest if we ever was to try to do that, because it's going to be the wrong thing to do.
Of course, and there's no legislation that we see passed to declare Liberia a Christian nation. So legally, it is not there. But our faith exists on Christian principles,
Correct.
and
Correct.
we share the common virtues that we see across other religions in our country, that
Right.
as diverse as our country, and those elements of wisdom that we share. For example, thou shalt not kill. We want love. We share love across every religion. We share compassion and other virtues that we all share, and we can uh, stand on those virtues or principles to live in a harmonious society. And so, legislating Liberia as a Christian nation, as some of the lawmakers were contemplating,
Mhm.
I believe it is wrong-headed,
It's wrong.
because, hey, we've been coexisting all along. And why would we want to legislate, a country to become a Christian nation? It doesn't make sense to me in a diverse nation or society.
Exactly.
Okay, so now, as we've been talking about, like Cary here, as part of the program, or not just part of the whole program, which of course is focusing on him, the question becomes, if Cary's legacy includes education, then maintaining that legacy means developing leaders.
Mhm.
Now, in your current role, what leadership qualities are you trying to form in the next
Mhm.
generation so the church can bless Liberia with integrity in public life?
Thank you. I think for me, I've tried my best. I've thrived on this one. Is that my leadership style is one of inclusivity. Okay, I like to include everyone, right? And one of the ways I do that is that my leadership style must always exhibit a compelling vision. I underscore that, those two words, a compelling vision, because I pride myself of trying to be a transformational leader.
Mhm.
Okay. And as a transformational leader, I must always be able to present a compelling vision. Okay. Let's stick with that for a second. Not just an inspirational vision, because anybody can be inspirational, but people don't live on inspiration alone.
Mhm.
Inspiration is one thing. That inspiration must then be harnessed in a way that it produces reality. Right? My vision must include everyone, and everyone must see themselves in that vision. In order for anything to fail, is for you to create a vision with people on the outside looking in.
Mhm.
A vision that must succeed must be preached or shared from the vantage point of everybody seeing themselves in the vision. One
Mhm.
of the reasons why Joseph brothers tried to, audience forgive me for going back and forth with scripture. I mean, that's I'm trained to do that, so I, I will try to explain it both ways, because I don't want to assume that everyone listening understands the Bible. That would not be fair, because it's not a church service. But there's a story in the Bible where Joseph, God blessed Joseph, uh, with dreams. They call him Joseph the Dreamer.
Mhm.
And because of his dreams, his brothers became envious of him and tried to kill him. And so that's I want to give an illustration. Um, one of the reasons I believe, Doc, that Joseph brothers tried to kill him was because they did not see themselves in his dreams as prominent figures. They did not. And whenever people don't see themselves in the dream, in your vision, they either find ways to distract it, to destroy it, or to dissuade you from pursuing your vision. And so I tell all our political leaders, if you want cooperation from the opposition, if you want cooperation from a young and youthful population, they must see themselves in the political vision. If they cannot see themselves in the political vision, they're not coming alongside of you.
Mhm.
Infrastructure is great, but if people don't have cars, they care less whether they're good roads.
Mhm.
We need to pin a political vision that people, whether you live in Soniwe, whether you live in Dwazo, whether you live in Foya, whether you live in Hapa, we can all see ourselves in that vision, because that's what nation building is really about. Everybody's seeing themselves within. So yeah, so my leadership style is one of transformation. All right, because listen now, listen, don't miss this one.
Mhm.
In order to change systems and structures, you must change the minds of people. You can invest billions of dollars in systems and structures. If you don't prepare the human capacity to work within those systems and structures, it's money wasted.
Mhm.
And the reason why we keep repeating the same old mistakes in our political discourse in Liberia is because we haven't set a trajectory to change the mindset of
Mhm.
our people, how they think, how they process. We haven't been able to do that. And so we're spending and spending on infrastructure, which is good, but spending on everything else. We're spending on the one hand, but spinning. What do I mean by spinning? I mean that when we're just dancing around
Yeah.
the political realities of our time. And we can't afford to do that. So my leadership is transformational because I want to change people. Because when you change people, people will change systems and structures. Like I always say, look, I'd rather have good people in bad structures than bad people in good structures. Because the good people will correct the bad structures.
Mhm.
But if you got bad people in good structures, will not change you. Systems will not change you. You change systems.
Exactly. And that brings us to the health of the church community, Liberian church community today. When you look at the Liberian church today, what encouraging sign or signs that you see that Cary's legacy is alive, and what warning signs concern you that the church is drifting?
Yeah. Uh, Several things. I think one, there are many churches that still engage in Christian mission. There are many churches that still are providing education. There are many
Mhm.
churches still into healthcare. There are many churches still into caring for the orphans. There are
Yeah.
many churches that, are part of other civic, partner with civic organization to get things done. You can go down the list. So, I mean, all is not lost, but the church still continues to play a significant role in Liberian society. We still do. We still do. From small congregations to large congregations, they're still giving scholarships. They're still providing, medical care. They're still feeding. I mean, take my own church, Providence, for an example. Our mentally challenged young people that are hung up on drugs. I wouldn't use the word that we use to describe them because I don't think is healthy. But the hundreds of our young people that are strung out on drugs, that just living off the streets in Monrovia. Pastor Sam, on his leadership, feeds them. I would like to say every Friday or every other Friday. I'm not so sure about that, but I know on a regular basis, he feeds them a hot meal at the church. All right. That's something. You have other churches trying to cater to other needs. So the church is still keeping Lott Cary's missional emphasis alive. And I'm not just talking about Baptist churches. I'm talking about across the board, Pentecostal brothers and sisters, Anglicans. We are all trying to do what we can. So that aspect of the church is vital and vibrant. All right.
Yes.
Most of us are doing that. Kudos to us and a hand clap for that. However, on the flip side,
Mhm.
some of the things that concerns me is that I think we have, to some extent, lost our prophetic voice.
Hmm.
I think we've lost our prophetic voice. I think some of us have become too cozy with the powers that be. On any given Sunday, any given program, the next time you're in Liberia, just do this exercise. We have a tradition in Liberia we call lifting an offering. And so we invite lifters. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but in my church tradition, we do that. We invite people to lift it off, meaning to raise offerings. On any big anniversary Sunday, go to any of our churches and read the list of people on that offering list. You will find it's filled with government officials.
Hmm.
So how can you speak truth to power if you are relying on them to help you raise your offering?
Hmm.
If they're one of your major donors to your clinic you're trying to build, or your school you're trying to build, or your vacation you're trying to take. I'm being honest here.
So would that be a greatest threat to church credibility right
It's a
now?
threat. It's a threat to church credibility. Yeah, it is.
Hmm.
When you lose your prophetic voice
Mhm.
and replace it with political access, that's a problem.
Hmm.
It's a problem. The church must always be the conscience of the nation.
Yeah.
As long as the church remains the conscience of the nation, the church integrity stays intact. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not a proponent of the separation of church and state to the extent that churches should not be involved in politics. That's not where I'm going with this. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that churches should avoid to the best of their abilities, should avoid the relationship with politics to the extent that it quench the prophetic voice. That's where I'm going with this. So that part of church life bothers me. The other part of church life that bothers me is the prosperity gospel that is so, I mean, it's just across the length and breadth of our Christian religious community, where people are told that if they only do something then God will do this for them. It's like it's a bargain between they and God. If you do this, then God will do this. If you want your anointing, you do this. If you want, a US visa, you do this. If you want to get pregnant, you do this. I mean, I think I understand the Bible fairly well. Not very well, but I think fairly well to understand that that's not biblical. That God's blessings is not dependent on human actions. And so the proliferation of prosperity gospel, it's a concern for me. And I think it's a negative on the church. So on the one hand, seeking political access over and above your prophetic voice is one, and you're diluting the gospel for blessings and religious gain is another serious concern that I have. So if you ask me what my two concerns, that would be the third one would be uneducated, as I mentioned it earlier, uneducated clergy people.
Uneducated. Okay, so why if a pastor is listening to you right now, and he might be thinking, well, I mean, I can receive donation from a minister or a cabinet minister in the government if they are part of my church, or they hear me asking for a building fund, maybe heard me on the radio or television, and they donate, but I can still speak the truth. There's nothing wrong with getting donations. What would you tell
There's nothing wrong with it. No, there's nothing wrong with it.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with it. But here's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm saying. That, look, man, what I'm saying is this. There are some unscrupulous character in our society who have been accused or in some instances charged with economic crimes, but they still appear on church on church invited list to come and help them raise offerings. I'm not talking about if you're a member of a church. I'm talking about people who are invited from the outside. So how can you, in good conscience, preach about corruption when you're receiving money earned through corruption? How can you do that?
Yeah. Wow. And you talk about the proliferation of churches or fast-growing churches, prosperity gospel in our country. I believe it was Bishop Selly who spoke against that recently. So then the dilemma is, okay, how can we curtail fraud and exploitation of the congregation from these prosperity teaching? Will you prefer a tighter grip from the government to curb that, or would you prefer the church itself, through the Liberia Council of Churches, to do something about it through accountability by letting churches be accountable more and more, or set a certain criteria that will qualify them to operate a church? What is your view? What is your perspective?
Well, I don't think government, when you start inviting government to get involved with certain institutions, the question will become, when do you stop? I would not encourage government to be a part of this, no. Even though one side of me would like that, to be honest with you, just how government require doctors and lawyers to have license to practice, they can ask the same of the church. I mean, but I wouldn't go to that extent, But this is what I would say. I would say every church, every mosque should be registered within the Republic of Liberia. Every religious institution should be registered in our country, right? And it becomes the Christian Council to superintend, that aspect of church life. I don't think government should do that. I mean, government can, but I don't think government should. But I believe that if the Liberian Council of Churches, for that matter, I think government can say that for any church to function, legally in Liberia, they must register with the Liberian Council of Churches. I think that's easy to do. And then the Council of Churches can then, set up rules by
Mhm.
which pastors become, elected or hired as pastors. Because let me tell you this, and people say, well, that's the person's spiritual thing. They can do it. But here is the danger. Here's the
Mhm.
danger. Again, I go back to where I started. An educated people is an emancipated people,
Mhm.
right? The more we have the proliferation of unsound biblical teachings, the more we will have churches and congregants who fall prey to manipulative pastors and preachers. And that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Okay. Okay. And in the midst of all of these challenges, do you think there is still greatest or great opportunity for faithful influence of the Liberian
Certainly,
church in all
certainly,
strata of society?
certainly. The church is, look, the church, believe me or not, the church is the most influential institution in Liberia.
Yeah.
I'd say this unapologetically. The
Mhm.
church is the most influential institution in the Republic of Liberia, hands down.
Mhm. And let's talk about everyday life of the common people. If the gospel is real, it should reshape how we treat people, how we work with people, how we handle money, how we forgive, how we tell the truth. In what ways has church historically shaped Liberian social behavior, and where is that influence fading today?
I would say the most influential way is through our church schools,
Mm,
our educational institutions. That's the number one way, because here it is. For the most part, as far as I know, there has never been a church school that have required only Christians to attend. Have never been. All schools were open to everyone, even though those persons of other faiths knew that Bible was being taught in these schools. They knew that, but they still send the children to these
mhm,
schools.
mhm,
So I would say the number one way that the church uh, has had its imprint on the social construct of the Liberian society has been through our educational institutions.
mhm,
That's the number one way. All right. The other way is through what we call Sunday school, or through our Christian education, which obviously is limited to those members who attend. So through your Sunday schools and through your circular schools, by those two things, it
mhm.
has really uh, introduced a social construct that has lived on to today. You know, so understand too now that the framers of our constitution and the framers of our country were all persons who were either formerly enslaved
Mhm.
or came from that lineage of formerly enslaved. Right? So their whole orientation, everyone who came to Liberia with Lott Cary, all right, came. They were all born into slavery, born into southern U.S. life, and that's what they brought back to Liberia. So if you look at all of those old pictures,
Mhm.
you will see all of them in what tailcoats and top hats.
Yeah.
All right, tailcoat, top hat with a bow tie.
Yeah.
That's all they wore all the time, because that's how they saw the slave masters would dress to go to
Yeah.
church, to go to formal occasions. And they brought that into our society. And so coat and tie was introduced into our fashion culture by those persons who came from America
Yeah.
to establish what is now Liberia. So all those different avenues has helped to frame what we have today. Now, if you look at our culture post war,
Mhm.
all right, Just look at the church culture post-war. Those persons who fled Liberia and worship in churches in the sub-region, whether it was Nigeria, Ghana, and Sierra Leone, all right, they brought back with them a new church culture.
Yeah.
That has now taken a unique shape that now the African attire is predominant in Liberia. It was not before the war. African attire was worn on Fridays to government offices. Check anyone older than you, they will tell you that. People did not wear African outfits to the offices Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday was African Day.
Yeah.
All right. Now we wear our beautiful, beautiful African attires. All right. The drums and the salsa was never used in a Providence Baptist church. Are you kidding me? Was never. As a matter of fact, the first time in Providence history that the drums were actually played in Providence was under my leadership as choir director for our junior choir. And this was in 1984, 85, round about that. The first time that drums were actually played in Providence. Not because I brought it in for, no, it's because we pleaded with them. We encouraged them to consider the young people. So it was not like I had any control to just bring it. No, I worked with the leadership at the time. And, we kind of play on the fact that we're young people and there was a young thing and they allow us to do that, But yeah, our social norms were influenced by Christian education in churches and Christian education institutions, as well as our, national leaders as they translated their social norms from Southern US to the shores of Liberia.
Yeah, and we are running out of time here, but this is an interesting question here from Hamilton Zilli, and I'm going to read it on the screen here. He said, this is interesting, and I would like to throw these two questions. Why were mission schools originally established in Liberia, and what core values were they meant to promote beyond academic instruction? Are mission schools in Liberia today still fulfilling their original purpose of providing accessible, value-based education to underserved communities? What's your perspective? I know you said a whole lot about it, but in a nutshell, can you answer this question?
Yeah, certainly, and I'm happy for the question. Number one, there were two core values for mission schools. One, education, secular education, and two, Christian values. Those were the two core guiding principles. Teach people how to read and write and do arithmetic and science and all of that good stuff, but also part of its strategic core value was to teach them Christian principle with the view of converting them to Christianity. So now, the second part of that question, I cannot speak for all the mission schools. I can speak for the mission school that I gave leadership to, and that's the Cary Baptist Mission School. We have a campus in Brewerville that's over 100 years old, and we have one in Bopolo, Bagbolo County. And yes, I know it's a man or woman that asked the question, but my friend, yeah, both of those institutions are still keeping true to those two values.
Okay, great. And let's end here with clarity and hope. If Cary could speak to the Liberian church today, what do you believe he will urge all of us to reclaim, and what he will warn us to repent of?
Wow. Now you got to put me in the mind of a great historical figure. But knowing the little I know, and just another historical fact, Cary was not part of the group that really declared Liberia independence in 1847. All right, Cary died in 1828. Like Cary was only in Liberia, unfortunately, for 6 years. He arrived 1822 and died 1828. So while he did contribute to the early formation of the colony, all right, he was not part of the signers of our Declaration of Independence. Neither was he part of that political structure that declared Liberia independence. But he did play his role prior to his death in 1828. But what will Lott Cary say to the church today? I think Lott Cary will be hopeful. I think Lott Cary would encourage us to continue to use the gospel as a transformational force for good, not to separate, not to divide, but to bring people together. I think Lott Cary would ask us to, uphold moral authority rooted in integrity. I think he would say that. I think Lott Cary would say that we should make sacrifices to empower the poor, the marginalized, those living on the fringes. Like Cary will want us to enlarge in our tent and bring more people into the center. Like Cary will want us to go down to West Point
Hmm.
and create a society with proper hygiene.
Hmm.
He will want us to go into Soniwe and clean up the flooded areas. He will want us to go, on the beaches of Buchanan and help the erosion from destroying houses. Lott Cary will want us to go into the highways and byways and bring in the orphans, bring in our young men and women who are strung out on drugs, and let them know that they are just value in our society as the one who rides in a convoy. Like Cary will want us to do that. Like Cary will want us to be inclusive in our approach in politics, in religion, and in education. Like Cary will want us to do that. But Lott Cary will also warn us against exploitation. Lott Cary will warn us of diluting the gospel. And Lott Cary will warn us of neglect. And so while on the one hand, Lott Cary is encouraging us to be prophetic and practical,
Mhm.
he also asking us to be true and faithful to the gospel.
Well, Reverend Dr. Emmett L. Dunn, thank you so much. And there has been a needed conversation. We already look back, not to live in the past, but to learn what kind of church Liberia needs today, or educational system that will shape social and cultural behavior. Before we go, give us one brief word of encouragement to pastors, lay leaders, and young believers listening, especially those who want to serve our country with clean hands and a steady faith.
My friends, politics is not a dirty thing. You don't have to compromise yourself to engage yourself in political discourse. The church should not be afraid to tackle the issue of politics, because if we don't, then we are left to cater to the wounded people who walk into our churches on Sundays or any other given day. We need to become true prophetic partners with government so that hand in hand we can create a community of love and inclusion. So, to anyone out there who's thinking about wanting to transform lives, you can do it through education, through the church, certainly through the government. For Liberia belongs to all of us. And it's going to take all of us to make it the country that we want it to be. Don't feel left out. Don't leave yourself out. Let us join hands and make Liberia a wholesome, helpful, and hopeful society. For indeed, with God above, our rights to prove, we will overall prevail. Thank you. God bless and good night.
And we thank God for the witness of Cary and for every believer who has carried the gospel with courage and compassion. We also want to say that to all church leaders or even members of the congregation, we ask the Lord to make our pulpits true, our leaders accountable, and our worship sincere. And we ask the Lord to continue to teach us his love and his word, to honor truth, and to serve the vulnerable with joy. And that's how we'll leave it today. We'll be back here again next week, Saturday at the same time at 6 p.m. And it was a pleasure, Dr. Dunn, for your time that you spent with us today on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Until then, please don't forget to share our link with your friends, your families, and your loved ones so that they can be a part of this podcast. Just click the share button and so they can join us as well. Until then, we'll see you again. Bye for now.